good evening, and welcome to this Wednesday, September 9th edition of Honest That Sports Show. I'm joined by co-host Jason Juggling Jay Ford. Jay, no big surprise this week when CONCACAF and FIFA decided to push back the first round matches of the World Cup qualifiers. Obviously, last week I had the interview with the president of CONCACAF, Mr. Victor Montagliani. We had a chat, and towards the end, he did indicate that, there was a strong possibility that they will push the first two round matches back to next year, but obviously they had to discuss it all. Your thoughts once hearing that the inevitable was the decision was made?
Relieved. Relieved, and that's for all parties. All parties that's involved, especially the players, the health and safety of all the players. Because you've got players, and I even just look there for us, for a country, we don't have much depth in our team. So our professional players who are playing on the other side of the world, when we need these players to be competitive on this stage, we need these players. And how are they going to get to where we're going to go? Some of these places are even still closed to today. And with no, I won't say ending in sight, but you can't have a competition if you don't even understand how these teams are going to get to the competition, let alone how you're going to deal when you're at the country, So it's obviously, you called it, actually, you called it that as something that, how many windows were they going to take advantage of? I think it'll probably be reassessed after the second one, because I don't think even then you can say it'll be in the third World Cup window. I think we assess then and see where we are as far as some countries that you want to host these games.
Definitely. I mean, I know right after the decision was made, I interviewed the president of the Bermuda Football Association, Mark Wade, who gave a simple explanation of someone in our team, such as Billy Clement.
Yes.
How would he get to these places if he's got to come from way over another part of the world? And that's one. He's one of our players, but we have multiple players who would have that problem. And then you look at a team like Canada. How are they going to get their players in? So it's one of those things where it's so many different moving parts. Yeah. So in the end, the right decision was made. I don't know if they'll now have a rethink of the draw, because obviously the World Cup starting dates will remain the same. Mm-hmm. How they have all these as you could tell, the Europeans have already started theirs. So our window now becomes smaller and smaller and smaller to have the qualifiers and have the three teams from this region, or whatever amount of teams it is from this region, qualify for the World Cup, and then still having enough time to prepare.
Tell me something. I'm just going to throw this out there, because I'm pretty sure many of the guys who have probably thought of this, but what would be the what would you think about trying to formulate a bubble and having a so-called pre-tournament World Cup qualifier tournament, having all the games at one, could be a neutral venue, but all the games at a neutral venue? I mean, obviously it's going to take away from the home and away, but we've seen this across the sports. To get these games played, they're going to probably just go away from the home and away atmosphere. Because you're looking at a time limit that these games need to get in and finish by to start the World Cup on time. So whether they pick a particular country that's players can get to the country, get there early, maybe 2 weeks prior, and then stay there for a month, maybe for basically the tournament where all the teams will play each other once, I believe. So even if it's 2 weeks, so let's say 2 weeks as far as the tournament, and let's say 2 weeks as far as getting there and getting all the testing and stuff to create that bubble. I wouldn't be surprised if something like that is not being pushed on the table right now.
Well, the president of the Bermuda Football Association did indicate that had come up. You have a major problem with that when you have some of the countries in the Caribbean who have some full-time players and some part-time players.
Oh, yeah.
The full-time players, that's their job. So a month away from their job is a long time. Yeah. And then remember, amateur players, they made that sacrifice last year, taking the month off for the Gold Cup. or even longer. I think it was like 6 weeks off for the Gold Cup. So, when you start and then don't forget, it's Gold Cup as well next year as well. So, you're looking at two major events happening for Bermuda. And it's going to be a lot of demanding international football because of the what's at stake.
How bad do we really want these games to happen? Not just as a fan. I'm talking about the regions, the FIFAs and everybody. How bad do we really want those games to happen? Because realistically, it's going to probably be a financial strain on them regardless. Anyway you go about it. You're going to have to. You're not going to make the money that you was making last year or whatever you are leading up to this year. So there's going to be a loss somewhere. But how do you minimize that loss? Because and that's it. I mean, obviously, it will have to be more financial to take care of these players and families and everybody else. Obviously, what about the professional players? I mean, I'm thinking about it now. What about professional players? Did they stay away from their teams that for a whole month? I mean, it's gonna be. Do they match the salaries? I mean, how do they go about that? It's gonna be how much do they really need to get these games going? And that's what's the
World Cup one. The World Cup one. Remember, that is one, if not the biggest major money maker globally. Globally, right?
Globally.
So the FIFA, in order for the affiliates to make money, they need the World Cup, right?
Yes.
But you got to remember that then you need to convince your governments, because it's not just a football decision now. It's a country decision, because a country like Bermuda, it affects us all because we have players living all over the island. So how does that work for them? And then it comes down to not only a player decision, but a conversation with his or her boss. Because I say his or her because we do have people within the squad that are females that help to do certain things and will need time off as well. So you have a point. How badly do we want it to happen, or how badly do we need it to happen? I think it's really, really important that it happens because of the financial aspects. Now, I'm not saying that and saying that lives don't matter.
Exactly.
When it comes to
you can't risk the lives because of the money, right?
Right.
But you can't sacrifice the amount of money you're going to make this happen. Also,
yes. So all the heads have to be at the table discussing how, one, you can keep your players safe. Two, how you can have a safe environment that they'll be in. How you can then have a safe tournament to then move on. Now, okay, so the World Cup is in 2022 in Qatar. I don't think anybody that I know of that I've been tracking online has even thought to track what are the things like in Qatar.
Yeah.
Right now.
And not only just getting to Qatar.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that right now we're so focused on what's directly what's ahead of us, because we can't even think 2 years down the road, because this virus it's a moving the goalposts. No pun intended, but the goalposts keep moving. So
right now it's on the edge of the center circle of the halfway line.
And then if you hear from some specialists are saying about, what, we're coming into the flu season, there's going to be a second wave in a lot of countries. Okay, now, so what's that going to mean now? Because some of these countries, right now it's easy to travel through, but will they start going back and tighten up on the travel restrictions? So Qatar, I don't know how many people's actually thinking that far ahead. I mean, you have to, but realistically, we try to get a game off, and that's, once again, it's going to come back down to how much do you really need to get this game? The sacrifice that's going to have to be made. And I go back. I don't want to use the NBA because the NBA was all professional,
right,
all professional.
Yes,
but you remember there was a lot of kickback of players not seeing families for 2 months.
Right.
2 months. Some players opted out.
Yeah.
Because of their families, and they made a business decision regarding with their families. That might happen with this situation.
Yeah.
The sacrifice they've made, and you could probably say it's been pretty much all successful because the rounds are going and there's been no widespread and positive cases at all. So they've done a brilliant job.
They've got the pockets, but they've controlled it and they've contained it very well.
And whoever's broke the protocols, see you later.
Yeah,
And
I did, and I'll encourage people to watch daily the World Health Organization, even if you just go and listen to a little bit of what they're saying. I caught it the other day, and they were talking about the upcoming flu season, and they have to be very careful on now the diagnosis of whether you have the flu or you have COVID. A lot of people is just going to assume people that are sick have COVID, when it could be the flu. So they're trying to get messages out in their way to medical practitioners to understand that you want to be very cautious. You want to be staying on the COVID thing, but you want to make sure that if somebody comes into your office with symptoms of the flu, you're not marking it down as COVID.
Or the common cold.
Well, yeah. But the way they can determine whether or not you have COVID as opposed to you have the flu, they want to make sure that those numbers remain the same, because what you don't want to do is have a widespread panic, even more panic that 5 people have the flu. Now remember, during our lockdown days or our early days, everybody was reporting about the senior homes. And it was, okay, COVID, and now you don't even hear about the senior homes anymore, do you? You haven't heard about them anymore, right? So you're telling me that they're not still catching COVID, or, come on.
You know where I stand with a lot of this, sir.
Oh, yes.
Like I said, I mean, I'm just looking at it on a whole, whereas, okay, look at the past couple of days with Mason Greenwood and the youngster, the English player. Santon.
Yeah. Santon. You broke the rules, get cracking.
We cannot afford that, because you may have broken the rule, but no, everybody that was involved with you, now they have to be subject maybe to quarantine or this, that, and the other. And that can just really ruin not only a team's chance, but a country's chance.
Mm-hmm.
And you're talking about money. It's that risk. So it's
I am baffled, Jason. I'm baffled at professional players who agree to terms break the rule. I'm baffled.
Human.
Well, yes, but you are looked at a little differently.
Earl.
And yes, human. And young. We have to put in the young, but come on.
Earl, human. One thing I love about sports, and I've told you this many times, most sports is predicated on how many mistakes you don't make.
Right. The team that makes the least amount of mistakes 9 times out of 10 wins.
Every game is predicated on mistakes.
Yeah.
You can watch the U.S. tennis, the Open. How many times you throw the ball up properly to hit it properly?
Right.
Yeah. The first serve, your good chance of you winning is pretty good compared to your second serve now, is it?
Right.
You hit the ball, you catch the ball right, and you might score. If you don't, you miss kick it, ain't gonna score.
That's right. So true.
A lot of these and humans will make mistakes, whether it's emotionally. Sometimes these things are done out of emotionally. Sometimes these could be out of stupidity. Where they know better. They just want to go against the grain, and that's being selfish. But that it's also a microcosm of society.
Right.
Yeah, people breaking the law every day. They know we shouldn't be speeding or things of that nature. We know we should be. We know what our speed is supposed to be here on the island.
Yes.
Supposed to be.
Yeah.
As long as you don't get caught,
Right.
I've always said the same thing. Oh, these guys are getting paid $1 million. They know they should be smoking weed with the laws that they have with the league. $1 million, they get $10 million, $100 million. You can just stop smoking weed for 5 years, maybe.
Yeah.
And then you can have all the weed in your life.
Oh, yeah.
That's what we'll be thinking. But some of these guys feel like, you know what?
I'll take the chance.
I'm gonna take the chance.
Yeah. Well, let's turn attention to the local front, because we know the Football League season got underway with the Charity Shield on Friday night at the National Sports Center, and we're joined now by Stacey Babb. Good evening, Stacey. We're just talking
Hey,
about the Charity Shield that took place at the National Sports Center on Friday evening, where the Southampton Rangers defeated North Village Rams 4-0. Rather humid night. It was just one of those things where Southampton Rangers technically got their players refreshed each and every time, every chance they got. Where I think just that, because the North Village Rams players, as the second half progressed, they were dropping like sacks of potatoes, needing a medical attention for cramp. Stacey, you've actually officiated in some of these preseason games. Do you feel as if the players are equipped right now for this temperature? I know we have it every year, and we start off like this all the time, but I think a lot of these coaches are becoming more technical before the players are fit enough to actually go through the early part of the season. What's your thoughts?
Actually, I've observed a couple of preseason games. Fitness Sense is not only, coaches putting through their paces and trying to get that preseason fitness training in, but it's also important for Recovery Sense. How are the players actually recovering from the fitness regime that the coaches are trying to put them through, which can result in players dropping like flies, although they had a few preseason games underneath their belt in the high heat temps of 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock times of the day, as opposed to in the evening. So that's what it ultimately comes down to, is the recovery period, the recovery time of players, and then personal training to be prepared so they're not dropping like flies or dropping like sacks of potatoes, as you want to say, when it comes to when the season starts, which is not. So that's very important as well.
Jason, looked like you wanted to say something just now.
yeah, it's two. I believe it's always been two very important times of our season that it really plays a part. Number one is the beginning, because you mentioned some of these guys that do play two sports, they have a leg up on some of the guys who just got the whole off season. So they're, especially with cricket, where these guys are acclimated to a lot of the heat. But once again, it's not a continuous running that you have in football. And the other part is Christmas time, after the Christmas break. You have a lot of guys that really take a good break. Now, some of these guys, they need a break, but some of them take a really good break, and you always find that first couple of games after the Christmas break, you see the same things. The other thing is you can have all these practice games you want, but to emulate the day of, and just as a player, Stacey and Earl, you guys remember, especially Earl, I mean, might be, I got to go back a little while for you to remember. But
why you keep throwing this old thing, man?
But just the anxiety of playing, just the nervousness of playing, all these things are actually attributed to cramp.
Yeah. The anxiety of it all. Yeah.
Exactly. And now we're talking a cup game at that. So, everything that goes into those, people don't realize if you're just having a kick, who cares if you mean, okay, you won, all right. I'll see you next week, but actually cup game, all these things, the sweating that you normally not sweating and all these things. And if you're not conditioned to take in the water or the right amount of water and lead, not just that day, but leading up to that day. I think that's where, when amateurs don't have the nutritionist, okay, you know what, we've got this tournament coming up, we're going to pump these guys and all this water because we're going to these hot conditions. As amateurs, we just got a glass of water in the morning, let's get a kick.
Yeah. Well, we had the Dudley Eve matches take place on Monday as well. Devonshire Cougars beating PHC 2-0, and Robin Hood beating Somerset 1-0. I think all the coaches in these particular games, yes, you want to win, but I think what they want to do is get some meaningful games under their players' belt, because you even mentioned it, because when you're playing as opposed to a practice match, the intensity is a little different, the mindset's a little different. Because of the level of competition, that's a little different. So you put a lot more strain on your body, and a lot of people won't understand that, or probably won't even agree with it. But as an athlete, in a normal game, your mind does different things to you. you challenge yourself a little more. But in a practice match, yeah, I'm not going into that tackle too hard. I'll back off because I want to play. You know what I mean? So you kind of take time off in a practice match as opposed to a regular match. So another interesting matchup this coming weekend where the Bermuda Cricket Board have announced players that will take part in the All-Star on Saturday, but the all-important fixtures on Sunday will see Warwick and Flats play in the First Division playoff final. And then, of course, the Premier Division final round will take place with the mouth-watering matchup between Southampton Rangers and St. David's. The two teams are tied on points, with Southampton Rangers, I believe, having just a slight edge with the run rate. So those two matches on Sunday will be both. I know people will probably, if they go to the Saturday game, will probably just stay up, camp out. It'll be the cup match and be ready for Sunday. But Jason, you've seen a few of these games. What do you think the prospects of the Warwick Flats match will be?
So, the dynamic of the two teams is a little bit different there with Warwick and Flats. Flats, you've got a good bit of veterans that are actually playing. The likes of Gino Smith, Baker, Kaiwan Franks, Carey. But you also got a crop of these youngsters, Logan Jones, and the likes, I believe, Shane Robinson, that's also been playing with them on the 19s. So they have a nice little nucleus. Warwick, we know, is predicated on all these youngsters. Mind you, glad to see that saw him over the weekend. Clay Darrow coming back playing for Warwick, and also Butterfield.
Yes. Well, the biggest problem is they lost some big players that were playing all season for them going back to school. So those veterans would have had to come out to help.
And they came good. They came good. That's the main thing, coming good. So it's going to be. I would probably, if Warwick had a full squad, I probably would have given it the side to Warwick. But with, like I said, losing some of the players, and was Dominic Sabir, was he one of the players that have gone back?
He's in the UK.
Oops. Because he's been one of the lead run getters in the First Division. Yeah. So you take that as one of your leading run getters. That's like taking Regino Smith, who's one of the leading run getters in the First Division, take him out of Flats. Mm-hmm. Even though he made probably a big 70, but he's still one of the lead run getters. Right. The matchup, the next day matchup is a little bit more intriguing because of the fact that Rangers is predicated on a good batting lineup, and St. Davis is predicated on what? A good bowling lineup.
Right.
I think the game is actually be the opposite. How well does Rangers bowl, and how well does because you're gonna expect somebody from Rangers to score 30 or 40.
Right.
You're gonna expect it. Trey, the month of guys they have, you're gonna expect 1-2 guys to make 30s and 40s. You expect that. You're gonna expect somebody from St. Davis at 3 wickets.
Right.
What it's the other guys do?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting.
That is something that and where's that game gonna be played?
White Hill Field, 3 p.m.
Once again, that field is not forgiving.
No. Plenty of space.
Yes. So which team takes advantage of the singles?
Yeah.
I did hear that there was a slight. I haven't spoke to him. A good friend of mine. You might have to hang it up shortly. But Ricardo Brangman carrying an injury. He's been very important in the top order of that St. David's. Now, OJ Pitcher, glad to see him back. Mind he didn't make nothing, but glad to see him back. But once again, you can't really lose those top players, especially at a game like this.
Yeah.
All right. And Stacey, how do you feel about that decision Somerset made at the beginning of the year? I'm not playing that game.
Well, of course, that's come to bite them in the butt and cost them in the ultimate, especially with having Mr. Lavrock there in his batting groove and everything else. That definitely cost them at the end of the day. Not playing that first game. So every game is as important as the first. So
yeah.
That's so true. That's probably the biggest lesson I think we'll all learn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But Well, as a team, they made a decision, whether or not everybody agreed with it or not. As a team, they made a decision. So as a team, they understood what the ramifications would be, and this is where they find themselves finishing either second or third.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, hindsight's always 20/20, but
Yes.
I think at the time they thought they was doing the right thing, and as a team, you know,
Right.
you take it on the
Can't
chin.
knock them for it.
Nope.
Well, guys, we're going to be joined by Garen Wilkinson from the Bermuda Sandshell Association. Good evening, Garen. How are you this evening?
Good evening, everyone. How you doing?
Hey,
Evening,
We're
Mr.
good.
Wilkinson.
We're good.
Yeah, it's been a while, but yeah.
Well, Garen, obviously there's some big news in the sport for the Bermuda participants. Bring us up to speed on what is actually taking place with Bermuda Sandshell and having a coach come in, passing all the COVID stuff, all the legal stuff. But
Sure.
give us a sense of what actually is going to be happening over the next few months.
Yeah, I mean, in a year full of frustrations for our athletes, obviously, I mean, has been a silver lining to a lot of it. I mean, a lot of our athletes have had a chance to heal up their injuries, and since we've been back in training, working on a lot of our technical sort of techniques before we really get into fight camp. But one of the big announcements we got or received earlier this year was that Wushu, which is our sport and the national sport of China, was going to be featured in the Youth Olympics in Dakar, Senegal. And of course, for us, Wushu has never been an official Olympic sport and fell, I guess, in the four sort of major games that is supported by the Bermuda Olympic Association. But as a result of Wushu being a part of the Youth Olympics, we were able to take advantage of some of the Pan American athlete and coach development funding. So initially, the Dakar Youth Olympics was scheduled for 2022. It's essentially being postponed for 4 years due to the postponement of the actual Tokyo Olympics. So it's now scheduled for 2026. We had a youth development athlete team, which consisted of Milan Powell, Chloe Botello, and Kentaro Bean, who are teenagers and who would have fell, within the age range of 15 to 18, which is the age range that's going to be contested. Since the Dakar Olympics is not going to be taking place in 2026, those athletes essentially will not be eligible. But the good thing is that it's really going to give us a chance to develop our program. Our initial budget consisted of us sending those athletes overseas, or the competition fees, them training at schools overseas, us bringing coaches in. As a result of COVID, and I guess as a result of the superb job that Bermuda has been able to do in keeping our shores relatively virus free, we decided to actually bring a coach here for a fairly long time. We have a coach by the name of Adriano Lorenzo da Silva from Brazil. He's the most decorated Wushu athlete in our region. He's a good friend of mine. We actually met back in 2007 at Bermuda's first World Wushu Championships, which was held in China. And you may remember that Wushu World Wushu Championship was the qualifier for the Beijing Olympic tournament, which featured Wushu because of Wushu being the national sport of China. He actually qualified for that event. To qualify for that event, you had to place in the top 8 in the world, and Adriano, representing our region, actually did place in the top 8 in the world. And has had a number of sort of the top 8 is like the magic number, has had a number of top 8 finishes at numerous world championships. Placing in the top 8 qualifies you for subsequent events like the Taolu World Cup, etc. So he's a very decorated athlete, a very good coach. He coaches at the national level and has a number of Pan American medalists under his tutelage. So we're looking forward to having him. He actually arrives on the island next week. He's not going to start formal coaching until the 28th. We're going to go through the 14-day quarantine process and just make sure everything's smooth. Although as a country, I guess he prefer to, once he gets his negative results, he'd be free to move around. A number of gyms and also private businesses have their own sort of protocols, best practices in place for 14 days. So we've decided to follow that. About the week of 28th September, he's going to be starting his coaching. And people over the next week or so will start to see a lot of posts on social media, etc. So Bermuda Sanshao Wushu Association, we, I guess, officially became the national sports governing body for all Chinese martial arts in Bermuda as of April 1st. Due to the sports recognition policy, which came out in 2019, we were finally sort of accepted as a national sports governing body after years and years of pleading that we should be the national sports governing body for our sport. So that sports recognition policy actually played into our favor. We've always carried ourselves and conducted ourselves as if we were a national sports governing body in the form of our drug testing and submitting the financials and all of that. So it was a really easy process for us. We just literally, we had all the boxes ticked. So it's been great, and we've, as the national sports governing body, we've been able to, have the martial arts schools that are competing Chinese martial arts in Bermuda. So Wing Lam Kung Fu School, Kai Yun Shaolin Academy. Wing Lam Kung Fu School is actually my instructor's school. So the development training is going to take place. A lot of the development training is going to take place in those classes. Of course, I teach out of Aries Sports Center, the other, I guess, element of Wushu, which is Sanda. And we're going to be having some intro to Wushu beginners classes. So it's a lot going on. And he's going to be teaching for a period of 11 weeks. And in 11 weeks, we do have a lot that we want to accomplish, but we're very much looking forward to it, and Adriano is as well.
Yeah. When you look at the different forms, I know a lot of people, when we start talking about Sanda and Wushu, when they go to fight nights, you might see the Wushu going on, or the kickboxing as the layman would call it. But when you start talking about Wushu becoming a youth Olympic event, what style are we talking about, that if these kids are able to qualify, what they will be actually doing in these competitions? Yeah,
and obviously we throw around a lot of terms. People hear Sanshao, Bermuda Sanshao Association, they say Sanda, Wushu, there's Kung Fu. It can get very very confusing. So Wushu is, just so it's clear, Wushu is the national sport of China, and basically Wushu is modern day Kung Fu, right? So you have Shaolin Kung Fu, you have Wudang Kung Fu, and what the Chinese government did in the 60s is they modernized it to make it more appealing to the general public, and also to make it a sport, right? Because Wushu it's a martial art, and a martial art is something that as martial artists, we practice basically until the day we die. But what the Chinese government did was put more sort of sporting elements into the art, and they divided it into two disciplines. Sanda is what most of the Bermuda public would be familiar with, the people who come to fight nights, and the Jamal Warriors, the Centauri Warriors, the Krista Dyers of Bermuda. Those are our top sort of Sanda athletes. And that is the full contact Chinese kickboxing. The element that is actually going to be in the Youth Olympics is called Taolu. Taolu is forms, or the equivalent of kata in karate. And I'm the only Bermudian that has actually competed in a Pan American or a world championship in Wushu, modern Wushu. We do have a traditional Kung Fu team. A very strong traditional Kung Fu team made up of, myself, Kaylin Cox, Kent Bean, Talia Iris, and also Kentaro Bean. So of those four athletes that I named, three of them I actually have been allocated as development coaches. So Talia, Kaylin, and Kent. Now, what we're going to be focusing on is the Talu or the forms, and there's 4 particular divisions that are going to be contested at the Olympics. So you have long fist, which is known as Cheng Chuan in Chinese. It was actually an event that I competed in, and also staff, the northern staff, known as Gunshu. All right, so those are typically contested as a pattern. So you have your long fist and you have your staff as sort of one division. They actually combine the scores to determine the winner. And then you're going to have open hand Tai Chi. And for the very first time, Tai Chi Fan. Some, people who come to like the martial arts tournaments here may have seen some of our athletes perform traditional fan form. Mm-hmm. Now, the good thing about the Wushu fan is that it's never been contested at an international level. So the playing field is essentially the same for everyone, because they're just starting to put out the courses now for like the routines that they're going to be using. So I'm trying to encourage our athletes to maybe lean towards the Tai Chi and the Tai Chi fan, only because the rest of the world is already sort of pretty advanced in the long fist and the staff form. The good thing is that the coach, Adriano Carmen, he's very well versed in all of the disciplines. So he's obviously going to be focusing on a lot of the events that are going to be contested at the Olympics, but we'll be touching on all of the other elements of Talu or forms in Wushu as well.
Yeah, I know. I have one more question before I get these guys get in, but just when you talked about the fan, the first thing I thought of was athletes from the background of gymnastics who sometimes use the ribbon, who use the ball, mm-hmm. who use that artiste, and their balance would actually help them if they get to a certain age and there's the gymnastic part of that goes out. It's not an opportunity to get involved because of the arts in which they do in the sport of gymnastics can actually help them in the form. Would you agree?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, so when I was training for the World Games, which was in Cali, Colombia in 2013, I did broadsword and I did staff. I spent a lot of time down at the the National Gymnastics Center down in St. David's on the floor down there, and right. and the coach was Duke back then. He was helping me a lot with my acrobatics and my twists. And for instance, countries like Russia, their entire Wushu team is made up of ex-gymnasts, and you can see their ability to jump and do splits and twist and turn. It's just unbelievable. So they've been able to sort of work together with gymnastics coaches there, and we've been trying to encourage. We all know that gymnastics is a relatively young sport, mm-hmm. right? Once you get out of your sort of teenage years, you're pretty much done as a competitive gymnast. So we've been trying to, encourage ex-athletes to possibly give Wushu a chance. You may know I'm sure you know one of our athletes, Riley Mason, yes. who's a Sunda fighter. Her sister is Sydney Mason, who's an ex gymnastics athlete, and we're also trying to sort of use her as sort of an individual that can help us to pull some of the gymnastics athletes in. But yeah, your observations are absolutely correct in that there's lots of overlap, and I personally think that gymnasts would make great future Wushu athletes for Bermuda. And because now it is going to be recognized on sort of a larger stage at the Olympic level, I think now is the time to possibly approach them.
Any questions, guys?
Mine is definitely a personal question right about now in reference to your coach coming down. Do you also provide adult courses or adult classes for novice want to get into wushu and learn about the martial arts?
Sure. So the flyer that should be coming out very soon, we're basically advertising the fact that he is here. He's even going to be doing like some morning Tai Chi classes on the beach. And he also has, I guess his schedule mainly from sort of 4:00 in the afternoon right through the nights are pretty packed, but we are going to offer the opportunity for people to do personal training sessions as well. We have to see, because we are limited on time, and the idea is wushu development. We really want to sort of focus on young athletes in the hope of encouraging them to take it up competitively, and sort of our current athletes that's already sort of training in martial arts. But there will be opportunities for adults to, if they're interested, to train as well.
Jay?
Thank you.
Garen, tell us some of the challenges you've had with this COVID. Obviously, the last few years, you guys have been very active, not just tournaments locally, but tournaments overseas, keeping these athletes motivated for the tournaments. I mean, we can be training, but they're always training to a common goal. And we've seen this in many other sports. What are the challenges, not just the physical side, but the mental side, to keep these athletes motivated?
It's been tough, to be honest. I mean, we had a really big year planned, with our biggest event being the Pan American Wushu Championships, which was supposed to take place in Brazil, Cup match weekend. So that was, we have a number of events on our sporting calendar for the year, usually 4 to 5, but we have one that's sort of like the marquee event. The Pan American Championships was certainly that. So we are very disappointed not to be able to take part in that. Now, as I was explaining earlier, our sport is one of those sports that in competition, nobody ever goes in 100% healthy. You always, because of the way we have to prepare, because we have to spar, because we have to fight, you always get in with a sprain or something. So, I mean, we've had people dealing with injuries for 3 years because, they come off a fight, take a couple of weeks off, and before we know it, we're getting back in for the next fight, right? So you never really have a chance to heal properly. What COVID has done is provided an opportunity for, those athletes that really need to heal is heal, because we just haven't been doing sparring. And we're members of Aries Sports Center, and they offer a ton of classes, and as a result, I didn't teach Sundar classes during the lockdown, but I was encouraging people to take part in other classes such as Body Combat, which is basically martial arts, done to the rhythm of music, and classes like Body Pump to increase our athlete strength and things like that. So I was actually surprised at the level of fitness of a lot of our athletes when they came back. Some of these guys are ready to go yesterday. I mean, some of them came back super slim, trim. They're like, we didn't have anything else to do but run all day. And so some of our athletes are really in good shape right now, which surprised me. Some have gone the opposite direction, but that was to be expected. But we're back in training. And it's kind of been like a phased in process, as for the fighters. The formers from my teacher's school have sort of been training all along, because it's an individual sport, right? You can be anywhere and do your forms. But for the fighters, it's, especially back in the gym, it's been sort of a phased in approach where we were only really doing sort of individual training in our own little pods, bag work. So that was for July when we first opened. And then August, we slowly moved into paired work, right? But it's all, there's still a lot of restrictions. Like, okay, if you're a sibling, then you're with your sibling. If you have a coworker that you're in class with, then you're partners with that person. One thing we don't do is switch partners out. When it comes to contact tracing and all that stuff, it's just really easy to say, well, I know exactly who this person was partnered with on this day. And the other thing is that, I think it's actually helped the gym to improve the way we do things, and that you must pre-register for a class. You can't just show up, right? So as a coach, it's actually helped us to formulate our sessions a bit better, because we know exactly who's going to be showing up that day. So it has led to some improvement. So I'm hopeful. I know on the local calendar, the first fight we're looking at is March. To join the boxers. Nikki Bascom, Andre Lamb, Mikey Parsons. As part of the fight night that was supposed to take place in March of this year. I don't know what the promoter's going to do because everybody wants to be on that fight card because it's basically going to be more than a year before anybody has touched. And if you know anything about fighters or athletes in general, we thrive off competition.
Right.
So
two fight nights. They're going to have to do 2 fight nights, a Friday and a Saturday.
It's going to have to be. It's going to have to be. I don't see it being any other way.
Right. Well, Garen, I want to thank you for your time. We'll look out for when he arrives and get back with you to see what his schedule will be like and what plans he has. Because obviously, I know you guys would have talked, but he would have an idea of how he wants things to be laid out as well.
Oh yeah, yes, for sure. He's a very involved coach, a very tactical coach. So he has a lot of things that he would like to accomplish while he's here. So it would be nice to have him on for a chat once he's arrived and settled.
All right. Well, we look forward to that. Well, folks, we've come to the time where we'll be talking with our overseas reporters. We have Anne-Marie Burke and Vernon A. Springer, but Anne is just recovering from a slight injury. Well, not a slight injury for her, injury as such. But let's get the reports from Anne-Marie and Vernon A. Springer.
All right, guys. Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Have a good one.
Well, we've come back because we've had a bit of technical problems with Anne-Marie's report. But looking at getting back to some of our cricket and some of our sports, obviously today, Delray Rollins and Sussex went down by 6 wickets on the final day, but early in the day to Surrey. They've in the 4-day matches that Delray has been playing, Sussex seemed to play well day 1. Be in the match day 2, start struggling day 3, and then day 4 it's kind of a done deal. They just need to be more consistent in the longer version of the game. Your thoughts on? Well, he's had some decent knocks. This was, I believe, his first half century in this game. The fact that he got Hashim Amla out twice. You look for personal goals. You set yourself personal goals. You look for personal satisfaction, even in a team sport. But looking at the 4-day performances of Sussex, I know the outgoing coach and the new coach coming in will be looking very, very hard at how they arrange those guys to be able to do better next year.
Yeah, I watched quite a bit of this match over the last couple of days. It's going to be interesting how they go about it, because the mindset of coming off this 2020s and jumping into a 4-day, and you can see the overlap of application. And that's been the main problem with even with the CPL, is just the application. I watched, even the out. He's Delray's second in is out, looking so comfortable, but then giving away a soft dismissal.
Mm-hmm.
It's unfortunate, because he looked like he's ready to go on to something big. Now even at 50. He got there pretty fast,
Right.
And I think at the time the team really needed somebody to stay there.
Yeah.
Second innings, they were in trouble. There's no doubt about it. They were in trouble, so they just needed somebody to stay there, because they had to bet almost, I want to say, a day and a half. Now, it's obviously it's a lot of time, but when you look at some of the players that are in that squad, you can say, well, it's definitely possible. But I hate to say this here, Earl, we've seen this happen with many teams around the world. Spin.
Yeah.
Spin.
Yeah.
Spin.
Do you one way or the other.
Spin. It's just it's if you have two quality spinners, you're going to dominate.
Right. And well, the players have to adjust, because in a normal year they would have played all these 4-day matches, gotten them out of the way, and then the blast is the end of season thing.
Yep.
And you could see them struggle, and all the teams are struggling. You said, with going from the 4-day to the 20, they play 3 20-20s, and then 2 days later or a day later you're back into a 4-day match. The only difference is you're wearing white clothes.
It's crazy you say that, because I've even seen the opposite. I've seen guys like Ross Taylor struggle down in the CPL. Now, he's a lot better at the longer version of the game. So to go down there and struggle, and you're not. I'm not saying it's not quality down there, but considering what it is, and it's gonna be interesting with that finals with the Trinidad squad and I want to say the Zouks St. Lucia.
Yeah.
We played in the finals. I think the finals tomorrow.
Yeah.
But to see the disappointment of the Jamaican team and just watching them play, it's like, okay, what are you doing? The
defending champions. I don't think they won a game. Barbados.
And man, I would really love to really know what Springer's thinking about.
Well, the thing was, unfortunately, we couldn't hear Anne Marie. She was really talking about the disappointment of.
He's really nice about him.
That performance for them. So, when you start hearing someone from the country that had high hopes for the team. Remember, 2 weeks ago when they had lost their first 2 games, she was on and she said that, they lost their first 2 games last year but came back and won the tournament. So they still had some hope that, history could repeat itself. The unfortunate thing is that history didn't, and they didn't win anything to progress on. So, there's a lot of soul searching and a lot of back to the drawing board. And, some will say, oh, COVID's had an effect and so forth, but you've got some teams that haven't put one game together, which would be a concern. Stacey, you've watched a lot of it, so you've even watched a lot of cricket here. Looking at how players approach the shorter form of the game, your thoughts on just watching that transform?
Watching the transformation of them approaching the shorter form of the game is, well, locally, it's been a little bit different. Sometimes there are strategies that they should be able to put in play, but because they might be concerned about, the bowler put the ball here, let me try to smack it for a 6. I smacked that one for a 6. The crowd was excited about that. Let me smack the next 6 instead of playing the overs as the overs come, really doing the necessary mental work in knowing, okay, this is the runs that my opponents made. These are the bowlers they have won. What are these bowlers bringing to the table? And how do I need to play this ball based off of also the field placement? Sometimes players forget, oh, well, let me just smack the six. Oh, it's a lollipop into, the field on the boundary, straight into his hands. Didn't even have to move to catch it. So that aspect of the game, really sitting there and focused and having a game plan for each individual player and sticking to it is very important. And that's why we see the difficulty of our teams locally with the Bladen lineup. Once you get the first 2 or 3 batters out, the game is pretty much done because the rest of the team doesn't know how to bring that tail in and stabilize the ship. In reference to, I guess, the longer form of the game for the overseas teams, it's definitely difficult not being out there playing to get that fitness for the long version of the game, to keep your focus and play for 4 days back to back, having to go outfield for hours, bet, and then go back out after that and field again for the next set of hours. And especially in that heat, everybody's been inside for X amount of months, days. So coming outside after COVID, well, not after COVID, but coming outside and getting back on that field in this serious heat climate plays a lot on your mental as well.
Yeah. Jay, getting back to that conversation we were having earlier about the who will show up for St. David's and who will show up for Rangers. Obviously, what Stacey was just mentioning comes into play, doesn't it?
Pretty much. I mean, that's going to be what's going to happen. But I was just thinking when Stacey was talking, because everything she's saying is absolutely right. As a coach, you're preaching to these, you're drilling your players. But then something just came across the Leverock effect.
Mm-hmm.
When you have somebody that special in your side, who could actually bet you could win your game in the first 4 overs.
Right.
Actually, win you the game in the first 4 overs, win you the game. Do you tell them, no, don't go hit? And now, and obviously with the crowds, obviously it's going to be crowds to the game. Now, how many other players, especially young ones, want to emulate that? That's good against everything what you're just saying that a coach should be preaching to these guys. But if they see somebody who's successful at it, and it's a special person.
As the coach, right? You take all your players in the change room, and then say, "Somebody come call me when he gets out."
When you see somebody like Chris Douglas, who's probably one of the most devastating batsmen in our this generation, take a back seat, and he's just a passer. He's just a spectator too. Oh, there's another one. There's another one. I mean, for most of those games, Earl, you've been there. He scored 50 runs within 4 to 5 overs. He scored 50.
Yeah.
Let alone what the score is. He's scoring 50. So when you look at 2020, especially in a power play, and that's when you're seeing a lot of these teams now trying to really take a hold of that first power play when the field is restricted inside. You get a quick 1/5. Let's say you get a quick 110 in the first 8 to 10 overs. You might manage to probably only get another 40, 50 runs. But now you've got 150, 160 runs on the board, but sometimes that's probably way too much for another team. So it's the approach that you mentioned, which I know that a lot of coaches will obviously try to drill it, because it's that same approach you want for the 50-over match. You want play the ball on as a merit. Look, we got enough runs this over. Okay, you hit 3 sixes in a row. Take your time. That's not the Leverock way. The Leverock way, you're going again. You're going long again.
Put my foot on the gas.
So the other day, the guy had some good. I want to say he had built 2 overs for about 4 runs, but the 3rd over he came up 30. Okay, well,
figures all messed up.
I thought I had a good day going.
Yeah.
Another thing I want guys get to just keep an eye on it. We've talked about it throughout the year. is I think whatever team gives up the least amount of extras.
Absolutely.
Right.
So they're coming with the first division.
Under 19s.
Yes.
Their semifinal. Now, mind you, the unfortunate thing about the under 19s in their semifinal against Flats, they had youngsters, and when I say youngsters, they had 13, 14, 15-year-olds playing for them, and they gave up a total of 40 extras.
Yes.
In their match, which is, I mean, they've been giving up 20s and high 20s. But to give up 40, you're already, and especially I think it was something like 24, 25 wides.
Yes.
That's an extra 8 overs if you look at it. You know what I mean? So
67 new bowls along with that. So that's still
right,
extra bowls again.
So when you start having to rebuild bowls, you're adding overs to your, not only runs, you're adding overs to your 20. So when you start looking at it like that, 6-4s or 24. So that's 4 overs there. Like you said, the 8 no balls, that's another 1.2 overs. So, it all adds up. So you're actually burning close to 30 overs trying to get out of burning 20, So those are the type of things that I think have to be drilled in and have to be understood by the players just to be that much more regimented. But I think the task in which Arnold and the coaching staff of the under 19s wanted to have, they had it because they were playing Saturdays, and then Sundays with their clubs. They were playing weeknights and also training. So I think they accomplished what they wanted to accomplish. The biggest problem is, well, one, if they have the tournament next year, what are we going to do in this off season to keep them kind of focused on cricket? Because that's where I think we have the biggest downfall. I think, any sport out of season in Bermuda, we kind of forget that it's actually, we're going into another season, but that's going to have to be worked out.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Who you got, Stacey, for the weekend?
For the weekend, for the game, probably shouldn't say this. I'm going for St. Davis. See how they
Against the Billies? Against the Billies? Against the Billies?
Yeah.
What about first division?
What about first division? Possibly Warwick Workman. See how they, come out to bat, focus. Of course, Flats more or less. If we had Coney has, that bit experience under the belt. But Warwick Workman's with the youth players and stuff like that. Definitely nice to see how many actually teams across board have youth players, so they have that foundation, and you have those older players giving those words of knowledge and jewels to the younger ones. That's good to see. So I'll go with Warwick Workman's on the younger end of a team. Go for the youth.
Earl, do you think Ricky Bradman's going to play a part as the former coach of Rangers?
That's kind of interesting. Maybe. No.
He knows the players through and through.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah. It's going to be interesting how that final plays out. Because to be honest, all those guys are good friends, especially the senior players in both teams. All good friends. So it's going to be some ribbon here and there. It's how the youngsters adapt to what they would consider the biggest game of their season and probably their life thus far. Some of these guys have been itching to get into the county team. Unfortunately, there was no county this year, so this will be considered their county cup. Being that it's the final, and which group of youngsters actually take the bull by the horns and work it out, because that's going to be the challenge.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely be the challenge.
Yeah. Well, guys, we've come to another finish of the Island Stats Sports Show on this Wednesday, September 9th. Thanks a lot.
See you next week.
Enjoy the night.
Have a good night.